Just when it looked like two of the world's most powerful alphas were locked in an unbreakable, mutually destructive Cold War, one of them blinked. In a stunning reversal, an apology was offered and accepted, ending a public feud. If you don't want to stick around, at the end of this video, I'm going to tell you that their relationship has settled into a new asymmetric equilibrium where Trump just showed Musk that he is the ultimate Big Daddy.
Madison Square Garden, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the greatest capitalist in the history of the United States of America, Elon Musk.
When I read Musk's apology post, I kept wondering whether this was a moment of surrender or it was simply a brilliant strategic move in a high-stakes game we couldn't see. Clearly, this was more than just a Twitter spat or falling out between two friends. What we witnessed was the inevitable, predictable collapse of a fundamentally unstable system. Their alliance was never a bromance. It was a strategic, high-stakes game between two alpha players, and it was doomed from the start.
As you can see, I'm not just MAGA, I'm dark MAGA.
Today, we're going beyond the headlines and use the cold, hard logic of game theory to dissect the psychology behind the Trump-Musk fallout. We'll break down the key moves from the cooperative handshake, public declaration of war, and the eventual public makeup. And we'll get to the why, according to the unwritten rules of power, that this was the only way it could have ever ended. This is the story of the Alpha's dilemma.
Major American car company in generations, and his rocket company is the only reason we can now send American astronauts into space. Come here. Take over, Elon. Yes, take over.
The bromance captivated the world. Following the assassination attempt at Trump's Butler, Pennsylvania rally in July 2024, Musk publicly endorsed Trump with a post on X. "I fully endorse President Trump and hope for his rapid recovery." To understand the collapse, we first have to understand the alliance. For a time, the partnership between Donald Trump and Elon Musk looked like a perfect cooperative game where both players stood to win big. We need to understand this not in terms of friendship, but in terms of payoffs. What did each player stand to gain? For Donald Trump, the payoffs were immense. In Elon Musk, he secured a culturally relevant tech world titan as an ally, blunting criticism that he was out of touch. More importantly, though, he gained a powerful media ally in X, a platform that he could use to bypass the mainstream media. Musk, in turn, began to echo Trump's talking points, giving the former president a veneer of technological credibility. For Elon Musk, the payoffs were just as compelling. An alliance with a potential president offered him a seat at the most powerful table in the world. He could influence policy on everything, from electric vehicles and space exploration to artificial intelligence and government regulation. All areas critical to his multi-trillion-dollar empire. He could protect his companies from political threats and solidify his image as a political kingmaker, a man whose influence transcended business. He even reportedly considered a formal advisory role in the White House before settling in for Doge.
You know, there are elections that come and go. Some elections are, important, some are not. But this one. This one really mattered. And I just want to say thank you for making it happen. Thank you.
Their public appearances and mutual praise were more than just friendly gestures. In game theory, these are known as costly signals. They are public demonstrations of commitment designed to show the world and each other that the alliance is credible and that both sides are invested. This aligns with a powerful psychological tool often used by billionaires, visualization. They were actively creating and projecting the reality of a powerful unified front. For a moment, it was the perfect equilibrium. Cooperate, cooperate. Both sides were winning. But this stability was built on a fragile assumption that their individual interests would always align. Game theory tells us that such equilibria are only stable as long as the payoffs for cooperation remain higher than the payoffs for betrayal. and that was about to change dramatically.
I can understand why he's upset. Remember, he was here for a long time. You saw a man who was very happy when he stood behind the Oval desk, and even with the black eye, I said, "You want a little makeup? We'll get you a little makeup." But he said, "No, I don't think so," which is interesting. Look, Elon and I had a great relationship. I don't know if we're well anymore.
The first major crack appeared when Musk publicly slammed a massive government spending bill supported by Trump, calling it a disgusting abomination. To an outsider, this looked like a sudden impulsive act of defiance, but through the lens of game theory, it was a perfectly rational and predictable defection. This is where we need to introduce a more advanced concept, one we've used before to analyze geopolitics, Robert Putnam's two-level game theory. It argues that leaders are never just playing one game, they're always playing at least two games simultaneously. Level 1, the international game. This is the public game that everyone sees, in this case, the Trump-Musk alliance. Level 2, the domestic game. This is the private game played with their core constituents, the audience that really matters to them. That is the game that ultimately destroyed the alliance, because while their public goals seemed aligned, their private level 2 games were on a collision course. First, consider Trump's real game. His primary audience isn't Elon Musk, it's his political MAGA base. His entire brand is built on projecting ultimate strength, demanding absolute loyalty, and ruthlessly punishing any perceived betrayal. In this game, allowing a subordinate, even a powerful one like Musk, to publicly criticize and humiliate him without consequences is a catastrophic negative payoff. It signals weakness. For his political survival, he must retaliate against any public defection. Cooperation is conditional on absolute loyalty. Now, consider Musk's real game. His primary responsibility isn't to Donald Trump, it is to his empire and his personal brand as a free-thinking maverick. He saw the spending bill as a threat that could fuel inflation and increase the national debt, directly harming the economic environment his businesses operate in and his mission at Doge. At that moment, the math of the game flipped. The payoff for defecting, which was to publicly oppose the bill to protect his financial interests and signal his independence, became higher than the payoff for cooperating and staying silently loyal. His disgusting abomination tweet was the logical move in his level 2 game.
And I am right about the great, big, beautiful bill. I'm very disappointed because Elon knew the inner workings of this bill better than almost anybody sitting here, better than you people. He knew everything about it. He had no problem with it. All of a sudden he had a problem, and he only developed the problem when he found out that we're going to have to cut the EV mandate, because that's billions and billions of dollars.
The alliance was broken the instant the demands for the domestic games came into direct, irreconcilable conflict. Musk's defection became the rational outcome of his own strategic calculations, and his defection triggered a classic game theory response, tit-for-tat. A defection is met with a retaliatory defection. But this quickly escalated from a simple exchange into something far more dangerous, a high-stakes game of chicken. Imagine two cars speeding towards each other. The first driver to swerve is the chicken. They lose face, but they survive. If neither swerves, they both crash in a fiery wreck of mutual destruction. This is the game that Trump and Musk began to play out in public. Trump made a bold move. He told the press that he was disappointed in Musk. Then he escalated, posting on Truth Social that the easiest way to save billions would be to terminate Elon's government subsidies and contracts. This is what game theorists call a credible threat. Sure, it can be considered an insult, but it was also a direct attack on Musk's level 2 interest, the financial viability of SpaceX, which relies on government contracts. Trump was grabbing the steering wheel and charging towards Musk, betting that the billionaire couldn't afford a head-on collision with the power of the federal government. But Trump underestimated his opponent. Musk's response was not to swerve, but to floor the accelerator. He shot back on X with a defiant, "Go ahead, make my day." He then escalated on his own threat. He announced that SpaceX would begin decommissioning the very spacecraft it used for NASA contracts, a subtle but clear signal of his willingness to disrupt his own government partnership. This was Musk signaling that he too was willing to crash the car. He was demonstrating that he had his own weapons, a massive media platform to inflict reputational damage and the power to create chaos in critical sectors like space travel. He was signaling that he would not be intimidated. So here we had two drivers pedal to the metal, speeding towards a head-on collision. The market held its breath. A crash seemed inevitable. And then Musk swerved. In a move that surprised observers, including myself, Musk issued a public apology. It was a calculated move in the game. And to understand why he swerved, we have to analyze the payoffs once again. For Musk, the payoff for crashing, which was to continue the fight, was catastrophic. The potential loss of SpaceX government contracts and a prolonged war with the president, and market instability for his companies like Tesla. The payoff for swerving, which was to issue an apology, had a cost. A public hit to his ego and his brand as an uncompromising maverick. I think his calculation, though, was ruthless but accurate. The reputational cost of a public apology was far lower than the multi-billion-dollar financial cost of continuing the fight. Trump's threat was definitely not a bluff. It was a credible threat, and Musk's apology proves that he believed it. He made the rational choice to sacrifice face to protect his empire. What makes this case particularly interesting is that the psychological dimension is equally compelling. Both Trump and Musk exhibit alpha-like traits. Dominance orientation. Both need to be the center of attention and the primary decision maker. Zero-sum thinking. Success is measured relative to others and not in absolute terms. Public validation. Their self-worth is tied to public perception and media coverage. And control obsession. Both need to control their narrative as well as their environments. These psychological traits made their alliance inherently unstable. The old equilibrium was cooperate. Both benefited from public alliance. The intermediate equilibrium was defect. Both were locked in a state of mutual public opposition. This was the classic tragedy of the prisoner's dilemma that played out on the world stage. Two rational actors pursuing their own self-interest end up in a position that is worse for both of them than their initial state of cooperation. Their alliance was never built on shared values, but on a temporary alignment of strategic payoffs. The fallout and subsequent reconciliation weren't mistakes. They were the game playing out exactly as the rules predicted, revealing that the true distribution of power between them was always predetermined. The dynamic has permanently shifted. The game isn't over for sure, but the hierarchy has been set. And two final things worth noting here. First, the power of platforms. Musk's control of X gave him asymmetric power in this conflict. Platform ownership in the digital age represents a new form of political leverage. Second, there are limits to wealth. Despite their combined wealth and influence, both players became trapped by the logic of their own positions. Money couldn't buy them out of this game theory prison.
We might have to put Doge on Elon. You know what Doge is? Doge is the monster that might have to go back and eat Elon. Wouldn't that be terrible?